Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I am Fuzz, and I'm here to entertain you. So, following up my video about my top 10 favorite Spellweaver cards, now we're going to do a list of top 10 not so favorite cards. Now, a little disclaimer, in deciding what to put on this list, I've decided to just not include cards like the aggressive goblins and elves because, while they are certainly annoying in the sense that you get rushed down and beaten really quickly, it's more like it's the fault of the just aggressive style, not the cards themselves. So the cards individually don't bother me as much. And also, including the 10 cards that are on this list, unlike, say, the top 10 cards that annoyed me in Duelist, I don't actually hate any of these cards, honestly. They just kind of get on my nerves, but I can live with them for the most part, which is actually strange. So there's a card game that I don't really hate any cards. It's actually a new situation for me because there's always been some cards in every game that I've hated. Oh well. But still, some cards had to make it on this list, and those that did, they could be a little less annoying. But anyways, without further ado, let's begin. Number 10. Number 10. Cataclysm. So coming in at number 10, we've got the Big Daddy Board Wipe. The Dominion card that says, make all the creatures just go away instantly. So, a card like this, you'd think it'd be higher up on the list, but honestly, Spellweaver is kind of lacking in board clears as it is, and Cataclysm is the only one that actually gets the job done. So I don't really hate it for that. Really, the only thing that might annoy me about the card itself is the fact that you're allowed to run 4 of them. And so, while it's rarely done, if you do, it's like you have to get your board wiped several times. But I do think a board wipe of this kind is necessary to have in the game, and it is fairly pricey, so it's not like it's unbalanced or anything. But something had to make number 10, so there it is. Coming at number 9, we've got Path to Transcendence. Now, I actually like this card. I'm gonna be honest. It's cool, but unfortunately, there's a problem I have with this card, and my problem with this card is the fact that among its many effects, including things like it's basically risk-free because you always get the creatures back, is the fact that there is no limit in how many creatures it can actually store under itself. And since it doesn't cost mana to put them under it, you only have to pay the 1 mana when they come out, you could, in theory, amass several creatures underneath it and then just unleash them all with Swift. And that's kind of lame. Now, that said, I still want the card to be in the game. I just wish it cost like 2 mana and maybe take away that aspect so that it can't store any number of creatures. It can only store 1 creature, and if you don't bring it out, you can't use it. And also, that way, if it costs 2 mana, it's a little bit easier to use, but you can't just keep stacking creatures underneath it. Or just change one other thing about it, like maybe not give the creature Swift. I would be okay with that as well if they didn't have Swift, because then it's like your creatures become lamps. You put a creature under path, it's invincible. It comes out with Swift, and then it goes back under. Comes out with Swift, goes back under. Or you get several things under it, and then it's just a Swift barrage. So my dream version of this card is 2 mana, and then just take off one of the effects. Preferably either Swift or any number of creatures. So put a creature limit on it. But otherwise, it's a cool card. It's just unfortunately used in rather ill-spirited manner for the most part. But anyways, moving on. Coming in at number 8 is Overwhelming Forces. It is the first card on the list that has an RNG element. Now, I'm gonna be honest. I don't like RNG. I can stand a little RNG, but I really don't like unnecessary RNG. Now, the RNG of this card comes from the fact that it doesn't matter what creature you get. You could get Karthus. You could get Red Dragon. Now, this card isn't necessarily that bad because it only really gets ridiculous when you already either have a ridiculous board or if you're really behind. But it just has a random element to it, and I don't like random elements, and so that's why. But it can be really cool. Kindle actually made a deck where you just played a whole bunch of elves, and you played like this card, and you put like 7 more creatures on the board as a result of it, and it was just really ridiculous. So the card is kind of cool, but again, the less RNG, the better. That's just my motto. Anyways, moving on. Mind Extortion. Now this card isn't necessarily RNG, but it kind of is in that you don't know what your opponent has in their hand. Now, that's not my problem with the card. My problem with the card is that it, number one, lets you look at your opponent's hand, and number two, cherry pick a card you don't like. Now, if they only have creatures, tough luck. But I've encountered several iterations of this card in Magic the Gathering. There were usually whatever they call the black color, and they were 1 mana, and they were always had the same effect. 1 mana, look at their hand, discard some kind of card, and sometimes there was a cost. But I just don't like messing with your opponent's hand. My hand is my hand, nobody else's. Don't touch my hand, don't mess with it, don't do anything with it, it's sacred. That's just one of my tenets of card games, is that your hand, your opponent should not be able to mess with your hand. I mean, I already don't like discard effects, but actively cherry picking through your hand and seeing your whole hand it does not agree with me. Now, even if you just look at the hand and don't discard anything, that alone is probably worth the 1 mana. So if I had to redesign this card, I'd probably make it cost like 2 mana and 2 aspects, but then let it discard any 1 card so it never misses, but it also costs you some tempo to use. But it still remains in the game as a tool for disrupting combos. So it does that, at least, reasonably well. And it's fair for doing that. But again, I just don't like people messing with my hand. It's just how I am. Anyways, moving on. Next up on the list, we've got Blood-Seeking Mutant. So Mr. Mutant has gathered some hate from players, and it's understandable why. Johto rated as the number 2 most powerful creature or something like that, and it is pretty good. It annoys me because it's kind of a board denial thing. You play it, you kill one of their things, and it's like it's gonna continue keep killing things, and it's just kind of nasty. Now, if before the change where it didn't have to be on the front, where now it is, it will probably be way higher on the list. But because it has to be on the front, you can somewhat deal with it. Maybe play a Haldiri or something to kill it. It's a little bit easier to deal with. It's still kind of annoying. People have said that it probably should cost 2 Dominion levels so that you can't just splash it in everything, because soldiers are splashing this card. Like, come on. A card this strong should be exclusive to an aspect, because it is pretty strong. Like, they could even make it 3 mana, like 3 Dominion aspects or something. I'd be okay with that, because you'd only be able to run this powerful card at 3 mana if you were heavily into Dominion. But as it is, it's basically, if you can afford to splash it, you might as well. It's a pretty good card, and yeah, it can be kind of depressing to play against. Oh well, we move on with our lives. On to number 5, Blood-Seeking Mutants' big brother, Lord Karthus, the Game Breaker himself. He annoys me for a very singular reason, and that is he basically limits design on other big creatures, because no matter what big creature you play, no matter what big creature you conceive of, it always loses to Karthus. He just comes on the board, chomps it, sticks the lance in it, or whatever it is that he does, gets you to 2 life. Now, unless we get a creature that is somehow either resistant to destruction or has some death rattle effect, Karthus is just the man. Like, you can't beat him in terms of power. Got a red dragon? Pop him. Got a big threat? Pop it. Like, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter how big it is, and he has a good stat line to boost. Now, the reason he isn't number 1 is because what's at number 1 and number 2 are cards that are, well, they're more RNG based, and I hate RNG. Karthus, yeah, he's kind of an icon of Spellweaver, the big badass, and he's cool. He's definitely cool, not nearly as broken as he used to be. He used to be kind of dumb, but still, I kind of feel like it's just, this is like the be-all end-all of powerful legendaries, because how do you make a legendary better than that? Unless you give it some strong enter the battlefield effect that that Karthus cannot deny. This is one of the reasons that Succubus is actually good, because it gives you the 6 life swing regardless. So even if she gets immediately killed by Karthus or something, you got your value. Unlike, say, Undead Hydra, which gets played and then just disintegrates. Sorry, Mr. Gamebreaker, but be glad you're not number 1. I do have some respect for you as a card. Coming in at number 4, we've got our good buddy Gnome Power Engineer. Now, Unicorn is not on the list because I kind of threw Unicorn in with this card since I dislike them for the same reason. But Gnome Power Engineer I dislike more, so he gets represented. Why do I dislike him more? Well, not only does he destroy spells instantly or artifacts, he has a secondary positive effect which you could benefit from even if you're destroying your own spells. For example, if you have a force field and it's about to expire, you just play this dude, blow it up, and then give something else a bunch of energy, like a new force field. There you go. And just the fact that he makes spells bad, because he just kills them. He really punishes people for playing spells. However, there are some spells, in fact, some of them are coming up on this list, that make this guy seem kind of necessary. Because if you didn't have a way to destroy spells, those spells would be bonkers. So it's kind of a difficult situation where you've got spells that are really powerful, and then you have spell removal that is also really powerful. Now when I say spells, I mean spells / artifacts. Because there's nothing that removes just spells and not artifacts. There is some that removes artifacts but not spells. But when I say spells, I mean anything that's not a creature, basically. So this guy and Unicorn, they are a very powerful answer to those things, perhaps too powerful, but the cards they are countering are themselves ridiculously powerful. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens, but it's just depressing when my favorite card, Dark Portal, gets destroyed by one of these cards, and then I get really sad because I just wanted my Portal to stay. But I understand that there has to be a way to answer spells. I just wish it wasn't restricted to just 2 aspects, and it wasn't this ridiculously efficient. Anyways, at number 3, the Helm of Dominion. It should come as no surprise that this card is on the list. I actually considered putting it at number 1, but then I thought of 2 other cards which I dislike more than this guy. Because at least this guy, you know what you're getting. I mean, this card is one of the examples of why Gnome is necessary, because this card is really nasty. It's 4 mana, get rid of anything, and it comes on your side. Good times, right? So if you couldn't get rid of this as a spell, it would be just really, really powerful. Thankfully you can, and if you do remove it, it's kind of a devastating move, because your opponent basically wasted a Helm and 4 mana. Not only that, Helm can be countered by more than Unicorn and Gnome. He can also be countered by Tornado Outbreak or any bounce effects, which makes Helm a riskier proposition. The problem is, that's mostly available to Nature. If you're not Nature, you're out of luck. You want to play that big-ass, awesome creature you've been saving? Well, now you have to kill it, because your opponent just helmed it. The only saving grace of this card is the fact that the creatures are getting weaker because you are putting weakness emblems on them, which means you can't steal everything. If you steal something small, it's just going to die next turn, so that's pointless. So that means you can't just steal Phase of Charm, for instance, or Disciples of Zash, because they'll just go away the next turn. But that just gives you more incentive to steal big stuff. But hey, could be worse. So, yeah. I don't know what we could do with this card if we could make it cost more mana. Again, making it cost 2 Dominion would make it a lot less splashable, which I probably would be okay with. If a card costs 2 aspects, it has the right to be more powerful because you are heavily investing into this aspect to be able to use it. But 1 aspect? I don't know. Seems a little bit too generous. And at number 2, we have the other spell that makes Gnome necessary, Gnome and Unicorn necessary, Electrostatic Storm. Now, this card used to be retarded because it used to not have any energy. It used to always do 3 damage, and never go away. So you played a storm, and then a second storm, and then nothing could ever get on the board. It was dumb as hell. Now it's a little bit more balanced, but the problem is giving it energy is not that difficult. And it's so, if you have, let's say, an unstable reactor, maybe the hero power that gives energy, you can conceivably keep it going for a long time and then even increase it. And so you get a free kill every single turn, which is really nasty. Not only that, it's random. So sometimes you end up praying to RNGesus. Now, thankfully, it is rare, but it's random nonetheless. Now, yes, it hits both sides, but if you're playing this card, you're playing a defensive deck anyways, and so you probably don't have any creatures, or you don't care if they get killed. So it's good for you, and it is just a ridiculously potent tool for just killing creatures. This comes on the board, if you don't have like a unicorn or something, you're losing a creature every single turn for free. Yep. And you can power this up pretty high to be able to kill just about anything. So, yeah, this card, I could definitely see, even though I play in one of my favorite decks, the Hazy Blue Reflector, I could definitely understand, and I do understand why people could hate this card, because it makes it impossible to play on the board. It just snipes the board. Now, one way you could fix it is that rather than like just do damage, you would have it shock that creature. Now, a Storm Wave costs a lot less then, but if it just shocked the creature, it wouldn't be as obnoxiously retarded. Now, it's kind of like, oh, play a Storm, play a second Storm. Yeah, at least it's harder to maintain multiple Storms now, because you can't just have two unstable reactors because they'll blow up. You need to have one unstable reactor and the hero power to keep them both going. Still, if you do, yeah, your board is pretty safe. Anything that comes on the board is just gonna die. So, what could be more annoying than this card? Actually, I only thought of that card kind of recently, I want to say. And I thought to myself, you know what? That card annoys me by far more than any other. What card is that? I was actually surprised to find out. Hypnotizing Whispers. I almost forgot this little card exists. Look at the top 5 cards of your enemies, of the enemy deck, and then, you know, you can play that card, play that creature. You have to pay the mana cost, but you just play it. So why does this card annoy me? Well, because it is incredibly random. Furthermore, it does not respect the aspect level of the creature that you're getting. So if you roll a Karthus, you just have to pay 4 mana, you get a Karthus. And that's a Karthus I'm not getting. So you just got lucky, stole my Karthus, and probably blew up some other creature in doing so. I know this because it's happened to me in Trials before. And I was very upset about that, because I lost that game soon after. So this card actually has the same effect as Advanced Espina's hero power used to be like, where you would look at an X number of cards based on how much mana you paid, and then you would play that card. And then to look at top 5, you would have to top 4, you would have to look at, you have to pay like 4 mana or 5 mana. So this actually is even more efficient. But that hero power was changed because it was really lame, because you were hoping just to luck into a good creature. This card does exactly that. It's not even a specifically good card. It's just completely random. You play it, it could be trash. You play it, it could be insane. And I don't like cards like that. I don't like cards where luck decides how good they are, especially when it can go from crap to a redonkulous, which is the case with this card, where you can get something crappy or even nothing at all. And then, you know, you could get a Karthus or Red Dragon or something dumb like that. Not only that, this actually lets you rearrange the other cards from your opponent's deck. So you could look at the top 5, oh, that's a cool creature played, and then just, you know, put the garbage in front and put the good cards later. So, it's an unnecessary RNG. The hero power was changed for a reason. I really wish this card would just go away. Even though it's not really strong, that doesn't mean it's not a problem. Problem cards don't have to be overpowered. They just have to be a problem. And I think this card is that, because while you could have a fun time just playing this, God, this isn't Hearthstone. This is what I think is a legitimate game where you could test your skill. It has very little RNG otherwise, and this is one of the most egregious examples of it. It's much worse than Storm, much worse than Overwhelming Forces, because it's completely random. How good it is depends on how lucky you get, and also kind of what kind of deck your opponent is running, but you could just get a really good card. Thankfully, you get to pick the creature, and you do have to pay the mana cost, so you can't play this too early, but still. Random is random, it's unnecessary, and I don't like it. So that's it. That's it for my list. I think I've complained enough about cards for one day. Anyways, release is right around the corner. I am looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing what those 6 cards are. I hope they are awesome, and I hope we're going to have some really good times trying to break them in some ways. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have yourselves the best day possible.